When it comes to the loss of life, specifically the 3 young children, it causes everybody to lean in and ask why.
Heartbreak in a Northern Ontario community. 4 people shot and killed in Sault Ste. Marie, 3 of them children.
Tonight, the investigation into what police are calling a tragic case of intimate partner violence. Good evening. The details are disturbing. The victims found in 2 separate homes.
The shooter also dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. CTV's Zarada Allman joins us with the details on the investigation. And Zarada, a community in mourning.
Michelle, the police chief says this tight-knit community of Sault Ste. Marie is in shock and grieving this unimaginable tragedy. While we don't have the exact details of what happened last night, investigators have confirmed it was the result of intimate partner violence. The 911 call came at 10:20 last night for a break-and-enter at a home. It was there police found the body of a 41-year-old dead of a gunshot wound. About 10 minutes later, another 911 call. That home about 3 kilometers away. Inside, police made the horrific discovery. The bodies of 3 children, aged 6, 7, and 12 years old. All 3 were shot to death. They also found the body of a 44-year-old, the shooter, police say, dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
When it comes to the loss of life, specifically the 3 young children, it causes everybody to lean in and ask why.
Police confirm both incidents are connected and the result of intimate partner violence. Sault Ste. Marie's mayor says the community is reeling.
There are no words to express how deeply sympathetic our community is feeling and the mourning that our community is experiencing.
The Prime Minister addressing the tragedy in Parliament this morning.
I want to extend my deepest condolences to the grieving families, friends and loved ones of the victims. Know that you are not alone.
A statement from the Algoma School Board says the entire school board community is heartbroken over the loss of 3 of their students. Staff have been put in place at schools impacted by this tragedy, which are Boreal French Immersion Public School and Superior Heights. Premier Doug Ford on social media called the news out of Sault Ste. Marie gut-wrenching, saying all of Ontario mourns this tragedy.
And when we look at scenarios like this, we all ask the question, why? How could somebody, oh my God, 3 children, it's incredibly challenging. And that's why I think the impetus for my message to the community is take care of each other. And hopefully this stuff never happens again.
The names of the victims have not been released. And the police chief reiterated this is not a random act of violence. There is no threat to public safety. And again, you heard there, he urged the community to watch out for one another and to reach out if they or someone they know is struggling. I'm Zarada Allman. Nathan, back to you.
All right, thank you, Zarada. York police have opened a homicide investigation after the remains of a man missing for more than 5 years were found in Richmond Hill. 30-year-old Kevin Bonata Rosas was reported missing in June of 2018 after last being seen at his home on Elmwood Avenue near Bayview and Major Mackenzie. Police say the remains were found buried in the yard of the property in June of this year, and forensics determined it was Bonata Rosas. His cause of death has not been released.
In St. Catharines, Ontario's Special Investigations Unit is looking into a fatal police-involved shooting. Officers with the Niagara Regional Police Service were called to a home on Melody Trail around 9 last night for reports of a man with a knife. The Special Investigations Unit says there was an interaction between officers and a 48-year-old man, which ended in the man being shot by police. He was pronounced dead at the scene. So far, no details have been provided about the nature of the call which brought police to the home. We turn to a major development in the sex assault trial of Peter Nygard.
CTV News has learned the former fashion mogul is set to take the stand in his own defense. CTV's John Woodward joins us live from the University Avenue Courthouse with the details. John.
Nathan, the prosecution's case is over, and now we are hearing from the defense team, who says Nygard will take the stand and deny the testimony of his 5 accusers. He will also rely on a character witness whose testimony today took on a different tone in the cross-examination. Peter Nygard's bedroom penthouse at his fashion company's headquarters in Toronto is where 5 women have testified that the former fashion mogul sexually assaulted them, in 2 cases allegedly while others watched. But his lawyer said in his address to the jury Tuesday it was no secret lair, but a widely known building feature known as the Finland Suite, visible in promotional videos like this one.
Brian Greenspan said Nygard sat with Toronto detectives when he was arrested in 2021 and would take the stand and testify before the jury, saying Peter Nygard's response, unlike much of his life, is remarkably simple and straightforward. It is impossible to have a recollection of what did not occur. He has a clear and unimpeded memory of countless details of his life, which render the history the complainants have provided as inaccurate, unreliable, and untrustworthy. Outside lawyers say putting Nygard on the stand could be a shrewd move.
Inevitably, in cases like this, it is vital, in my opinion, for the jury, or if it's a judge-alone trial, to hear from the accused and get their explanation of the events and put their narrative forward.
A publication ban protects the identity of one ex-girlfriend of Nygard who testified Tuesday from California, who said, "The Peter I know, everything I know about Peter is not that. I do feel very comfortable no matter what. Does he turn into a different person suddenly? I don't think so." Under cross-examination by Crown Attorney Neville Golwala, she revealed she never paid for the many trips with Nygard, including to his Bahamas property, said their relationship was not exclusive, and admitted that she did witness Nygard having group sex, but said it wasn't with any complainant. The 82-year-old has pleaded not guilty to 5 counts of sexual assault and 1 count of unlawful confinement in cases that stretch back to the 1980s.
Nygard was slated to testify as early as today, but that cross-examination took the court to the end of the day. He's expected to appear on the stand tomorrow morning. Reporting live from Toronto Superior Court, I'm John Woodward. Nathan, back to you.
All right, thank you, John. And you can follow developments in the trial on our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca. In the Middle East, this was one of the heaviest days of bombing since the war between Israel and Hamas began.
The situation in the Gaza Strip is getting increasingly dire for hundreds of thousands of people. Today, Canada joined other nations in favor of a humanitarian pause.
We're engaged closely with our allies on trying to build humanitarian corridors, get aid in, get civilians and foreign nationals out of Gaza. I think there's a lot of conversations going on now about the need for humanitarian pauses, and I think that's something that Canada could absolutely.
The U.S. and European allies have called for a humanitarian pause to ensure aid can get into Gaza safely and to allow people to leave the blockaded territory. In Israel, a woman with family in Canada spoke publicly for the first time since being released by Hamas. CTV's Heather Wright reports.
Frail and traumatized, Yocheved Lifshitz still managed to smile after spending more than 2 weeks as a Hamas hostage. "I've been through hell," she says, describing what has happened since October 7th. Lifshitz says Hamas terrorists kidnapped her from Kibbutz Nir Oz, threw her on the back of a motorcycle, and took her through a web of underground tunnels. The 85-year-old who has Parkinson's disease says she was beaten on the way, but that Hamas did give her and other prisoners food.
She is a ray of light in our life, in a big darkness. This is wonderful, but our hearts is with the over 200 hostages still there.
As many as 220 hostages remain in Gaza, including Lifshitz's husband, Oded. Israel says it killed top Hamas commanders in a barrage of airstrikes over the past 24 hours. Strikes that have further devastated the densely populated Gaza Strip. Hamas says Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 700 Palestinians over the past day, as a dire humanitarian crisis worsens. The UN says half of the enclave's 2.3 million residents are now homeless and in desperate need of food, medical supplies, and fuel.
Without fuel, the generators cannot produce electricity for hospitals, for bakeries, and for the water desalination plants.
At the United Nations Security Council, there are fears the conflict could spread across the region, prompting the United States Secretary of State to issue a warning to a longtime financial supporter of Hamas.
If Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people, we will defend our security, swiftly and decisively.
As some parties in Ottawa call for a ceasefire, the government says that's not possible, with Hamas still in control of Gaza.
I have no expectation that a terrorist organization would respect international law or any call for ceasefire.
And Heather Wright joins us now live from Tel Aviv. Heather, Canada now joining the United States and European allies in calling for a humanitarian pause. What would that entail, and might the sides agree?
Well, it's short of a full ceasefire, which is something the United Nations has called for, but it would give the aid workers on the ground a little bit of time to get that aid further into Gaza and distribute it to those who need it most. Whether both sides will agree really remains to be seen. I mean, Israel has ramped up its airstrikes over the last 24 hours, hitting about 400 targets within Gaza, and Hamas has also continued its airstrikes on Israel. I mean, there is the Iron Dome system here, and so it is very efficient in shooting down most of those rockets, but those barrages continue on both sides, and so there really would have to be a very severe de-escalation of the fighting in order for that to work, and it does not appear at this point that that is going to happen in the next coming days.
Heather, on a positive note in your report, seeing and hearing from that hostage who was released, offering some hope for the others, what is being done at this stage to secure the release of the remaining more than 200 hostages?
Well, they have been raining down leaflets inside Gaza over the last couple of days, leaflets that are basically asking the people of Gaza to provide Israel with any information that they might have in terms of the whereabouts of the hostages in exchange for security, for financial compensation. It's not clear if those leaflets are going to do anything, but it is another attempt by the Israeli government to try to bring some Gazans onto their side and perhaps provide a little bit of intelligence in terms of the whereabouts of the hostages. Now, this comes as targeted raids have been going on for the last 2 weeks, with people going in to Gaza trying to find out, what they can about the whereabouts of those hostages. And so this is part of an ongoing effort behind the scenes, and as well, negotiations likely continue with some of the intermediary states that we've seen involved in the previous release of hostages, including Qatar and Egypt.
Heather, before we let you go, what more can you tell us about the aid trickling in amid the humanitarian crisis in Gaza? We know fuel is a big one. They need it.
Yes, fuel is a really big one. Even aid workers are saying they might not be able to deliver and distribute the aid that they have if they don't get more fuel on the ground. And we've heard from doctors in Gaza over the last several days saying that it is really dire in many of the hospitals, that people could die very quickly if the electricity goes off and if those life-saving machines that are keeping many people alive go off suddenly. And so there is a push to get fuel in. There is a push to get more aid coming in on an ongoing basis. But fuel is the really tricky one here, because Israel has been adamant that they do not want fuel going into Gaza at this point. They fear that it will get into the hands of Hamas, who will use it in their fight against Israel. And they have also been out saying, Hamas has its own reserve of fuel, that they should be using that as well to help their own people. It's not entirely clear how much fuel Hamas might have, but that's the line that the Israelis are taking on fuel at the moment. And so it remains to be seen if fuel is going to be part of any aid package going in the coming days.
CTV's Heather Wright live for us tonight in Tel Aviv. Thank you. Closer to home, police have set up another command post in York Region, this one at Canada's Wonderland.
It's to address community concerns amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, and is one of a number of locations throughout the GTA. CTV's Janice Golding joins us live with the details. Janice.
Hi, Nathan. Yes, we're live at Bathurst in Lawrence, which is where you'll find one of the busiest command posts that police in the GTA have set up since the onset of the Israel-Hamas war. However, you'll find north of the city, police are also trying to reassure residents. York Region's mobile ride truck is now being used as a command post at Canada's Wonderland as police try to address residents' safety concerns arising from the conflict overseas.
Everyone is on heightened alert, and yeah, it's scary times.
We need protection.
So you do think this is important?
Of course.
Sergeant Clint Whitney stressed that the region is not dealing with any credible threats, although the force is engaging with federal and provincial partners and continually assessing the situation. Still, year over year,
we are looking at a bit of a 15% increase in the number of hate crime or hate biased incidents that are taking place in the region. And that's understandable given the situation. There is a heightened awareness.
This mobile command post, which will move to Markham later in the week and then on to Richmond Hill, is the second to be established in the region.
And the reason that the officers are here is to provide visibility, to provide availability, so that any members of the community that have any concerns, or if they have any information that they want to share, or if they simply want to just discuss the situation and find out what police are doing to keep everybody safe, our officers are here to do that.
More than a week ago, the first command post was set up at Promenade Mall at Bathurst and Centre Streets and is going over well with area residents.
Much more secure, sure. It's very reassuring that the police are over here at the Promenade. It's very good to know that when I walk out here in my community.
York police have also increased patrols near synagogues and mosques and faith-based institutions and educational facilities. York's mobile command post will operate again at Wonderland between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. before it moves to the Armadale Community Centre in Markham for the remainder of the week. Reporting live from Janice Golding, now back to Michelle.
Thank you, Janice. Let's switch gears and take a live look outside on a very mild Tuesday in October. We've had some cloud in the mix today, but that sun sure is shining as it sets. Nothing to block our beautiful sunset. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. What a mild evening, Lindsay.
Indeed, Michelle. We made it to a high of 20 degrees today here in Toronto, and you'll notice that it's still very mild at this hour. 19 in places like Brampton, Burlington, Mississauga, Toronto. A little bit cooler in Pickering and Oshawa, as well as communities north of the GTA. Part of the reason it's so mild, the winds. They are coming from a southwesterly direction. In most cases, we've had a few gusts, but they're starting to dissipate at this time. Overnight tonight, still very warm. 15 for the low. That's warmer than our average daytime high this time of year. A change for tomorrow condition-wise. We're going to talk about an increase in cloud cover and the chance of showers. That's ahead in your weather forecast. For now, Michelle, back to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Finding an affordable place to live continues to be an issue for so many people in the GTA.
Today, City of Toronto staff offers some solutions to address the shortage. CTV's Natalie Johnson joins us with the details. Natalie.
Hi, Nathan. This is a look into Olivia Chow's housing plan, a roadmap to dramatically increase supply to improve affordability and access, but it hinges on billions of dollars in government grants.
At 405 Sherbourne Street, this parking lot has been labeled housing ready. One of 5 sites where the city hopes to act as a public builder to get shovels in the ground on affordable homes fast.
It is a generational change that will shift how the city delivers housing and what kind of housing we prioritize.
The city unveiling today a $31 billion plan to construct 65,000 rent-controlled homes by 2030 in the face of a growing housing crisis.
We need a radical approach in order to truly help solve this challenge.
That approach making the city a powerful player in the direct delivery of housing, along with nonprofit partners and other levels of government. The target, 41,000 affordable rentals, 6,500 rent-geared to income homes, and 17,500 rent-controlled market homes. The plan involves unlocking parcels of city-owned land, like this Parkdale property. But the construction would come at a cost, up to $800 million required from both Ottawa and Queen's Park every year.
How confident are you that in 2030, these 65,000 homes will be ready to go?
I'm extremely confident. This is a well-proven way to get not just affordable housing, not just rental housing, but housing that stays affordable and rental in perpetuity.
My concern would be that this administration takes us down a road over the next couple of years where we are pursuing a public builder that at the end of the day is going to take longer and cost more money and deliver very little housing.
The plan also focuses on protecting existing housing stock at a time when 80,000 households are on the wait list for affordable housing.
I can't stand by as more and more people are pushed out of our city or into homelessness. So let's get building.
All they need now is council approval and cash.
And that cash is critical because of the 65,000 homes slated to be built in just 7 years, only 4,400 of them are funded. Reporting live at City Hall, I'm Natalie Johnson. Nathan, over to you.
All right, thank you, Natalie. Could relief be on the way for those who rent? New numbers out today finds rising rates are starting to slow. Why people paying month to month aren't buying it. That story still to come. At Queen's Park, the province is taking legal action against the federal government.
It's over an environmental law Ontario's Attorney General says is standing in the way of development. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us live with the details. Siobhan.
Michelle, close to 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court said that parts of this federal law are unconstitutional. But the Ontario government feels the way that news was delivered and then received by the Trudeau government has made things murky. So they're asking the courts to help clear the air. Doug Ford's government is turning to the courts to try and hit the gas on two controversial projects. Highway 413, a link between Halton and Peel regions, and a revamp of Ontario Place. They're being assessed by the federal government for how they might affect the environment and people. But the law that allows Ottawa to get involved is in question.
It's redundant legislation and it's unconstitutional legislation. It's in our space.
Earlier this month, the Supreme Court said the Impact Assessment Act is unconstitutional in part and invites the federal government to make decisions in respect of projects it has no jurisdiction to regulate. Still, Ontario feels a judicial review is needed for clarity.
We have projects that are going to be held up, that are being held up, because of the confusion caused by the federal government. There should be no confusion.
He feels that confusion comes from what the federal environment minister said after the Supreme Court weighed in.
We will now take this back and work quickly to improve the legislation through Parliament.
But Stephen Guilbeault stressed the law isn't dead since the court wasn't delivering a formal finding.
The Act continues to be in place, and we will continue to implement it in the spirit of collaboration with provinces, territories, and Indigenous peoples.
Downey feels there's still room for that dialogue, but
we can't wait for them to Minister Guilbeault to have that conversation. We need to get certainty so we can move the projects forward.
Opponents think this is opportunism at play.
This government is like Wile E. Coyote. It keeps trying one tactic after another to sneak through these subsidies to its friends.
Arguing the Supreme Court didn't take issue with the basis of the review of Highway 413.
Indigenous issues, federal species at risk, migratory birds, these are squarely federal issues of jurisdiction.
It's not clear if judicial reviews will be approved or how long they might take. Tonight, a spokesperson for Minister Guilbeault says they will introduce meaningful and targeted amendments to the legislation as soon as possible, but couldn't share a more specific timeline. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. To the fallout from the censure of former NDP MPP Sarah Jama, no longer able to participate in the legislature, her presence is still being felt. CTV's Mike Walker reports from her constituency in Hamilton Centre.
Sarah Jama's constituency office in Hamilton remains closed a day after she was censured in the legislature and kicked out of the NDP caucus.
I don't agree with it 100%. I think that the NDP is a pretty progressive party until, I guess, somebody speaks up and says how they feel.
Mixed feelings among constituents after the censure motion deemed Jama's pro-Palestinian social media post that didn't mention the Hamas attack on Israeli civilians as anti-Semitic and discriminatory.
Based on what she said, that's her opinion. It doesn't necessarily represent what we in this community feel.
Many wonder what this means for their voice at Queen's Park now that Jama is silenced and sits as an independent.
We now don't have a voice at Queen's Park, so where does that leave us? If we express concerns to her, where do they go?
She's representing a certain segment of the population, so if she cannot speak, that's an issue.
Jama was absent at Queen's Park today, her desk inside the House removed from the NDP bloc. The opposition has condemned the censure, but Merritt Stiles defending the decision to remove Jama from caucus, stating it was about a series of incidents.
It's untenable to be put in a position constantly where you're having all these surprises. It just breaks the trust down.
Vandalism at Stiles' constituency office this morning, the message "Free Palestine, blood on your hands" taped to the window and red paint smeared across a picture of the NDP leader.
You know, we have a bigger issue right now in this province, which is we have a very divided communities. We have a rise in Islamophobia and anti-Semitism.
Yesterday, the Hamilton Centre MPP spoke out against the censure while expressing support for the Palestinian people.
The Ford government has done nothing meaningful to say about these atrocities and has now targeted me to distract from its own scandals.
Jama can continue her constituency work and participate in committees. The censure silences Jama in the legislature until she makes a formal apology and retracts her original social media post.
It's a double whammy in the sense that she's no longer going to be recognized in the legislature by the speaker, but she's also losing her privileges that arise from being a member of the official opposition caucus.
It's always better to do an apology. It's always, that is the right thing to do. But then she is entitled for her opinion.
Stiles insists the decision to remove Jama was not made lightly, but at this point doesn't see a path for Jama to return to the NDP caucus. Mike Walker, CTV News.
A federal judge has approved a $23 billion settlement compensating First Nations children. The case centered around chronic underfunding of on-reserve child welfare services by Ottawa. In 2016, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal found First Nations children were adversely impacted by the services provided. Now, the federal government will compensate more than 300,000 children and their families. The Liberals say they're pleased the settlement has been approved and hope there will be peace for the litigants. The government has also set aside $20 billion for reform of the welfare system. And the federal government is instructing both sides in the St. Lawrence Seaway strike to sit down with a mediator. More than 360 workers at nearly all of the 15 locks along the trade corridor walked off the job Sunday. The strike is already affecting steelmakers and fertilizer shipping companies, as well as the grain farmers of Ontario. They say there's no other way to export most of their crops. The job action has shut down the Seaway, which stretches from Montreal through Lake Erie.
In Washington, House Republicans are back to square one in their search for a new speaker. Hours after he was nominated today, Tom Emmer abandoned his bid for the job. Like the others before him, a relatively small group of Republicans would have denied Emmer the necessary votes to win. Representatives Kevin Hearn and Mike Johnson have now both declared they are relaunching their bids for the Speaker's gavel.
Iceland's prime minister went on strike today, and she wasn't alone. Women across the country stayed away from work. They're demanding an end to unequal pay and gender-based violence. Trade unions called on women and non-binary people to refuse both paid and unpaid work for the day, including household chores. Schools and the health system said they would be heavily affected by the walkout.
Still to come, an on-ice reversal. The NHL backs down on its ban on Pride-themed hockey tape. The reason for the change and reaction coming up.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, buying a new car is expensive, which is why many people are trying to make their current vehicle last as long as possible. So what can you do to keep your car going down the road and out of the repair shop? We speak with auto experts. That's just ahead.
Well, it looks like Windsor is the hot spot of the province today at 24 degrees. Here in Toronto, our seasonal average is about 11. We made it to 20.3 degrees. That's warm, but it is shy of the record for this day. And that may be the case for us throughout this week. I do have my eye on Friday, though. We could come close. We'll talk all about it in your forecast and the cool down that's in store for the weekend coming up. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
The price of a new vehicle in Canada has topped $66,000, which is why many drivers want to keep their current car as long as possible.
Vehicles have vastly improved over the years, and if you take good care of yours, it may be able to last 300,000 kilometers or more. Here's Pat Foran in a Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Michelle and Nathan. Some vehicles are more dependable than others, but whatever car you have, it is possible to make it last longer. Experts say doing the correct maintenance, treating it properly, and driving carefully can save you money over time.
Starts up every time first day.
When we met Mark Intihar of Claremont last year, his 2000 Toyota Sienna van had recently hit the 930,000 kilometer mark.
Bam! Love it.
It still has the original engine and transmission, something he credits to frequent oil changes and following the maintenance schedule.
If it goes to a million smooth, I'm going to keep going. We'll see how far she'll go.
Consumer Report says your best bet to make a vehicle last is to follow the recommendations set out in your owner's manual.
Absolutely follow whatever your owner's manual is telling you about proper maintenance.
And if your car is making strange noises, don't ignore them.
When something is not correct, get it looked at right away. The problem won't go away by itself. it will only likely get worse and a lot more expensive.
Even if your vehicle is newer and under warranty, you still need to follow the maintenance guidelines.
If your car does blow up because you didn't do an oil change in a year and a half, and the manufacturer can prove that you haven't maintained it, you have zero warranty and you will have to eat that bill yourself. Like many things in the current economy, the price of auto repairs has increased dramatically. Everybody's expenses have gone up. The replacement parts have gone up. And of course, the salaries on the mechanics have gone up as well. So that's just the way things are these days. And vehicles are made to be driven. Don't let yours sit idle for extended periods.
Even if you're retired, even if you don't drive that much, try to get out there, start the car, drive it on the block, drive it to the grocery store, drive it.
When buying a new or used vehicle, do your research to see which ones have a reputation for reliability. The longer you can keep your car on the road can keep you out of a dealer's showroom and save you money. And oil changes are important, but as your car gets older, it may also need a transmission service, timing chain, or other belts and hoses. Spending money before a breakdown could prevent you from being stranded and keep your car running longer. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
All right, to the forecast. I happened to be outside quite a bit today, and a suit was fine. Didn't need a jacket.
Oh, what a great day to be outside. The first 2 days of this week are the dry ones. Now the rain is moving in, but we could have another 20-degree day.
Okay, here's the thing. This is, we've had 7 days this month of 20 degrees or warmer. You may recall we hit 30 at one point at the beginning of this month, and it's possible that we are going to hit 20 degrees 3 more times this week. This is just kind of the October it's been, and I don't know about you at home, but I've already put my patio furniture away for the season. Otherwise, I might be outside enjoying this evening. It's going to be very mild. Weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. Do you know where it's not so mild today? Parts of Alberta, the Northwest Territories, Yukon. It is -8 degrees right now in Whitehorse. It's -6 in Regina, Saskatchewan, but it's warm in the United States. 28 degrees once again in Memphis, Tennessee. We are not going to be that hot by any means as we make our way through the next couple of days here in southern Ontario, but we are tapping into some of that warmth. It's still 23 degrees, for example, in the Windsor area. Compare that to 0 in northern parts of Ontario. So a little bit of a divide right now, depending on where you are across the province, but we can all agree that this is quite warm. 15 for the low tonight in Toronto, maybe 16 in Niagara Falls, well above seasonal when it comes to the overnight norms. And our daytime high tomorrow, once again, likely to be around 20 degrees. We do have a chance of showers throughout the day. It is not going to rain all day long. No washout in store really over the next 7 days here. But we do have a couple of weak disturbances that are already moving through, bringing some thunder and lightning, in fact, to parts of the States and central Ontario. For us, we're going to see an increase in cloud cover through the night tonight. Tomorrow is generally going to be a cloudier day. And then let's try and give you an idea of when we could get into some of the shower activity here. So there's tomorrow morning. If you're an early riser, you might consider the rain jacket or maybe just bring the umbrella with you. Heavier rain is going to be mainly to our north, but a chance of showers once again as we make our way into Wednesday evening. Thursday is a variable clouds kind of day. Looks like we're going to get clipped by some wet weather midway through the day. And then overnight into Friday, the next round arrives. So just be prepared for unsettled conditions. Today was really the driest day of the next 7, it looks like at this point. Saturday, we are going to cool down, going from 20 degrees on Friday to maybe 11 for a high. That's it. Sunday into the single digits. Looks like that pattern will continue early next week. It's still a week away, but at this point, your Halloween next Tuesday is looking dry. That's the forecast for now. Nathan, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Still to come, new hope in the fight against cancer. Toronto doctors making a promising discovery: the blood test that can spot the disease before a tumor even develops.
Imagine being able to analyze a simple blood test that can detect cancer before a tumor develops.
Advancements at the Princess Margaret Cancer Centre and Sick Kids is making it a reality. As CTV's Beth McDonnell reports, it's sparking new hope for survival.
Juliette Locke and her mother, Luana, share more than a love of puzzles. They live with Li-Fraumeni syndrome, a rare inherited condition caused by a gene mutation which carries almost a 100% lifetime risk of developing cancer.
She always gets to put the very last piece in.
That's not true.
But now, more than ever, they're equipped to handle what lies ahead, thanks to the promising results from a study using a sophisticated blood test detecting cancer, even before a tumor or scan.
There's a little bit of that sense of, why me? Why was I the lucky one to be able to benefit from all of this?
This is my mom. Her name is Giulietta, and she's who I named my daughter after.
Different cancers claimed the lives of Luana's brother at 46, her mother at 36, and sister at 9. But for Luana and Juliette, an early detection program known as the Toronto Protocol, yearly MRIs and other tests, has proven to be a game changer. At 52, Luana has survived 6 cancers, including breast, lung, and thyroid cancer.
And they always ask me, when is my next cancer?
Dr. Raymond Kim has cared for Luana for almost 10 years and is a study co-author on the findings from the blood test. It uses technology called cell-free DNA to detect when a cancer is developing.
We're able to tell you your cell-free DNA signal seems high. Looks like you're going to get a cancer quite soon. Let's investigate a little bit more in depth because the worry is higher. And on contrary, if the cell-free DNA signal is low, that means the cells are not turning over very quickly. There isn't a tumor that we need to hunt for.
Doctors also believe the test will eventually reduce stressful and frequent scans and hospital visits. Juliette grew up doing them regularly. At 14, she was diagnosed with leukemia.
Relieving, and it was amazing to know that this is what science can do, that something as little as a tiny non-invasive poke can give you so much information.
Today at 17, she's in remission under the care of Dr. David Malkin, another study co-author.
We can now detect cancers extremely early with this technology, and that has huge implications on it. This tells us that we now have a test which should be able to be applied to any form of hereditary cancer,
sparking excitement and hope.
For my kids, for their kids, and for others too, absolutely.
Piecing together the puzzle that is cancer, creating better outcomes, and saving lives. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
Britney Spears' highly anticipated memoir hit bookshelves today.
It's incredible to finally have Britney's truth in her own words in my hands. This has been a long time coming, and obviously the last few years we haven't really known what's been going on with her.
Some fans got their hands on a copy of the autobiography at the grand unveiling in London last night. The Woman in Me offers an intimate look at the singer's life, including her upbringing, the impact of fame, her relationships, and the 13-year conservatorship controlled by her father.
A wax museum in Paris that was criticized over its statue of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson says it's giving the statue a do-over. These images show the statue on the left and Johnson on the right. The wax figure has attracted widespread ridicule on social media for its light skin. Even The Rock himself blasted the statue, saying he's reaching out to the museum to work on updating the wax figure. The museum says it's working on improving the wax work, adding the public's feedback is always valuable.
Stars Tonight is brought to you by Lastman's Bad Boy. Who's better? Nobody.
Is there relief on the way from rent inflation? What a new report reveals about where rent prices are going and why renters find it hard to believe.
On the next CP24 Breakfast,
we're live inside Scotiabank Arena with some familiar faces ahead of the Raptors' regular season opener.
That's on the next CP24 Breakfast, up first at 5:30.
There are no words to express how deeply sympathetic our community is feeling and the mourning that our community is experiencing.
Updating our top stories, 4 people were fatally shot in Sault Ste. Marie last night, including 3 children. The body of the shooter was also discovered following what police are calling a tragic case of intimate partner violence.
Inevitably, in cases like this,
It is vital, in my opinion, for the jury, or if it's a judge alone trial, to hear from the accused and get their explanation of the events and put their narrative forward.
CTV News has learned Peter Nygard will take the stand at his trial in Toronto. The fashion mogul is accused of sexually assaulting 5 women. The 82-year-old has pleaded not guilty in cases that stretch back to the 1980s.
We're engaged closely with our allies on trying to build humanitarian corridors, get aid in, get civilians and foreign nationals out of Gaza. I think there's a lot of conversations going on now about the need for humanitarian pauses, and I think that's something that Canada could ask.
Canada is joining other nations in expressing support for a humanitarian pause in the war between Israel and Hamas. It's hoped a temporary pause in the fighting would allow for aid to get into the Gaza Strip. Remember to keep up to date day and night through our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca, and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news, tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
On the markets, the Canadian dollar traded lower 22 points to settle at 72.80 U.S. American benchmark oil slid $1.75 to end the day at 83.74 a barrel. And the TSX Composite Index fell 60 points to end the day at 18,986.
A new report suggests rapidly rising rental rates in Toronto may be starting to ease, and that would be welcome news for anyone paying month to month. But as CTV's John Musselman reports, most say living in our city is still far from affordable.
Maurice Stewart is retired and lives in the West End on Lakeshore Boulevard. He says he can't believe how much rent has gone up in this city in his 20 years as a tenant.
Even in my building is $2,500 for a one-bedroom home, one-bedroom apartment, so it's crazy.
Samantha Hunter says she feels a bit lucky. She got a great deal on an apartment in Humber Bay during the pandemic, but she is always worried a rent increase could push her out of the area she loves.
I was able to work out a really good deal with my landlord, and he hasn't raised the rent since I've been here, which has been really, really good.
Is that something you worry about every month?
Definitely. I always think in the back of my head, okay, like, is he going to raise the rent, or am I going to be in a situation where I can no longer afford to live down here?
A new report released by renters.ca show rental costs in Toronto are beginning to slow. A 2% jump since last year. That's the slowest growth in rental increases in 2 years. Still, the numbers paint a bleak picture for renters in Toronto. The average rent in this city, just over $2,900 a month. That's up 0.1% over September. Here's a look at the GTA average asking rents. Brampton, $2,700. Vaughan, just under $2,700. Mississauga, Etobicoke, and York, all $2,600 or more. Toronto Metropolitan University urban planning and housing expert Nimoy Lewis says this is a complex issue, but there are strategic moves policymakers can use to reduce the burden on tenants.
Making sure that we're building more non-market housing to compete with the private sector. I think that right now there's a lot of talk about building more supply. I don't disagree that we need to build supply, but I think that we need to be mindful that we need to be building the right type of supply that Canadians can actually afford.
Some people we spoke with today say adding a roommate is the only way to cover the rent.
My fellow coworkers and a lot of people I know who are almost required to have multiple roommates.
The study report appears to suggest that the slowing rent increases could signal future relief for tenants. John Musselman, CTV News.
The NHL has rescinded its ban on players using pride tape on their hockey sticks this season. The move comes after weeks of outcry from players and fans. The ban was first imposed earlier this month as the league tried to crack down on the use of special on-ice gear for theme nights, including Pride Nights. Last Saturday, Arizona defenseman Travis Dermott became the first player to defy the NHL, sporting rainbow-colored tape on the handle of his stick. Dermott said he didn't want to go against the league, but felt passionately about using the tape.
The Professional Women's Hockey League has unveiled its logo ahead of its inaugural season. The PWHL says the logo represents the sport and its athletes with a stylized W to highlight women. The league says the crossed sticks represent a face-off and a new beginning for women's hockey. Training camp opens next month, with the regular season beginning in January. Talk about a special delivery.
A baby arriving during Sunday's NFL game between the Colts and the Cleveland Browns.
I talked with her and I told her she could not come on this day. I'm still shy.
Tylen Jones and baby Kimmery are doing great after they got a little more game day action than expected. Jones went to Lucas Oil Stadium to watch her cousin David Bell of the Cleveland Browns, and she went into labor during the game. Medics at the stadium helped deliver the baby, who is apparently the first child born at the venue, but it was a win-win, of course, with the little baby being born and the Browns beating the Colts 39-38.
Love the win-win line.
I mean, you're going to be welcoming a baby. You must look at that story with a different eye.
La 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 la.
Yeah. No babies during the newscast.
Yeah. No. Carrying on here. I'm just going to continue with the weather forecast and hope for the best. We are looking at a pretty clear night overall tonight. Here's one more look at the satellite and radar. Some rain for areas of northern Ontario. Waking up tomorrow morning, we could get into a few showers as well. So just be mindful of that. Maybe pack the umbrella. But tomorrow afternoon, once again, it's going to be mild. We might make it to 20 degrees, much like today. Just again, more cloud and the chance of showers. And we've got a mild rest of the work and school week ahead before a change in the temperature for the weekend. Nathan and Michelle.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zarada Ullman with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.